I'm making this video as a result of a recent Policy and Overview Scrutiny Committee meeting, which I'm a member of. I was unable to attend because I have a very slow internet connection, everything being online. I didn't have the sort of speed to connect, I couldn't stream. However, one of the key items on the agenda for that day was the looking at and coming out with a recommendation regarding the Hate Crime Charter. Now, the Hate Crime Charter goes a lot deeper than the title sort of infers that it does. As a society, protection of our rights and freedom of speech is a core value. It's something that we value greatly above anything else. And if lockdown has been a wake-up call for all of us, actually, we've all realised it's a wake-up call for showing what our Welsh Government and national government can do, what control they can impose upon us. We need to be worried. Freedom of speech is the fundamental foundation to this charter. This is where I feel we need to stop, gather our thoughts and see it for what it is. It's a primary freedom of speech, because without that freedom, no other freedom is protected. Political parties, they seem to be obsessed these days, pressured but obsessed, into what people say and how they express their opinions, rather than they are with dealing with the real issues that face society in this modern day, such as housing, putting food on the table, managing to secure employment. They're the important issues, not what people are saying. We're becoming bewitched these days by language, and perfectly decent people are having their lives and careers destroyed. We've seen our finest public figures, we've seen our finest journalists, we've seen their careers ended in this fashion. And we've got to the stage where now we need to say enough is enough. Total control is what we've seen during lockdown. Total control upon the population, directed by, in particular, our Welsh Government. Unless we act now, there's going to be a lot more control heading our way. And this Hate Crime Charter is the beginning. The new charter introduces two concepts. That's hate crime and hate speech. When hate crime comes through the door, can thought crime be far behind that? There's two elements to this charter that should fill us all with fear and dread. It defines, let me quote, any crime which is perceived by the receiving party as being motivated by hate. It's reliant on subjective criteria which should have no place in any just law or legislation. What burden of proof is going to be required? None at all. Technically, it's a charter to blackmail, it's a license to lie. There's a certain restrictive group of society with the power to use the legislation to suppress the free speech rights of a population. This has already been shown in the last couple of years. This is going to only increase racial and social tensions, such as the BLM protests last summer. Racial tensions were minimum. They increased it, I'd say, tenfold. They stirred the pot of racial tension. And if we continue down this path, it's going to stoke the fires of racial and social division. And we've seen enough of that. There's a confusing list of victim classes based upon race, religion, and a long list of terms relating to human sexuality. That includes transgender, sexual orientation, sexual characteristics, and sexual identity, gender identity. When we start getting into definitions like this, it opens a Pandora's box for the legal profession to deal with. An example, which I'll just randomly pick from my list, definition of homophobia is having negative and uninformed feelings towards homosexuality. Let me just repeat that. Negative and uninformed feelings towards homosexuality. Let me think of an example. Let's say a parent objects to the homosexual propaganda that's taught in many schools. I have nothing against homosexuality. My problem's with the propaganda. What if our parents express negative feelings towards this propaganda? Just negative feelings, which is a freedom. It's a freedom of speech. It's a freedom of thought. They could face prosecution for that. Call these developments, call them what you like, but don't call them progress, because they are not progress. The police, who I have a massive respect for, are going to be put in a position of prosecuting people, not for criminal acts, but for holding the wrong opinions. They're guardians of the peace. They uphold the law. They're not enforcers of an intolerant charter of political correctness. People such as ourselves with a history, a culture history, or a connection to their religious roots would be less able to resist the tyranny our government is beginning to force upon us. The other sort of spear and arrow of this thing that's going to attack us is mainstream media. They promote and control the news. They are, these days, modern day propagandists. They're not journalists at all anymore. Look at the role they played in rigging of the American elections, which they did. So let's not bow down to the mainstream media and the pressure our politicians are putting upon us. We have fought worse tyrants throughout our history than this, and we have every time chased them out of our country. That is what we need to do, chase them out of our society. We have the freedom to think, the freedom to hold a belief, the freedom to speak. This will take that all away. I'll give you an example. The chairman of the Policy and Overview Committee, who sort of championed this charter and what recommended it to Cabinet, I recently referred to him as a silly boy, and he reported that for hate speech. Now, if that chair of our committee has a definition of hate speech in those terms, we're doomed. That's just an example. That's exactly how these people work. We need to return the power to society, to ourselves, to the folk in the street, to the folk that live everyday lives. We're not in our ivory towers looked after for all of our lives. We have to fight, we have to work, we have to earn a living. We have to keep our liberty. We have to keep our freedom. If this charter, as recommended, goes through, especially at Pembrokeshire County Council, but more importantly, the UK, our freedoms will be taken from us very quickly. And we'll wake up one morning and it'll be too late to do anything about it. This is when you cannot rely on people like myself or Neil Hamilton from UKIP or Voice of Wales to fight your corner. We need numbers, we need the people, we need you to rise up and say enough. Enough is enough. It's gone too far.